we're looking at Mignonette Stitch, also known as net stitch. This is a little sample I started because I wanted to show you how soft and delicate it can be. Now, obviously that's going to depend on the thickness of the thread you use. This is worked in a size 80. You can see it's quite fine. I'm going to do the tutorial in a size 10, partly for my own sanity, but also so you can see what I'm doing. So mignonette is tiny little rings. They're connected by bare thread and can be worked in a straight line or in a round. You can use a single shuttle for this, but you'll need to cut and tie at the end of every round. Personally, that would not be my choice, especially with rings this size. If we work with 2 shuttles, we can climb out of each round with a split ring. We start with a previously worked element. Now, what that element is will obviously depend on your pattern. For today's tutorial, I've just tied 2 colours together and worked a true ring. I'm going to call this my foundation piece. I'm using 2 colours because I want you to be able to follow how we're climbing out of each round. If this was a real piece of work, I would have started with continuous thread. And you can see that today's oh God. Today's sample, you can see when I can show you properly, today's sample has 5 picots. The 6th picot is created when we climb out to the next round. We have a choice with how we climb out. We can either work a mock picot and then a split ring, or we can go straight into a split ring. I'll show you both and you guys can have a play and see which one you prefer. So I've worked our true ring. For our mock picot, we're setting our hand up as if we're making a chain. We're wrapping the first half of our stitch and bring that down until it's about the same size as your other picots. Work the second half and flip it, and that's probably a little bit small, but that is your mock picot. From there we're going into a split ring. We're going to do a count of 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. Once again, we have our true ring with our 5 picots and we're going straight into a split ring. So I'm hoping this is going to sit okay. I'm dealing with this beautiful knot, but we'll see how we go. Wrapping our hand for a split ring, make the first half and pull that down, not quite all the way because we're going to create our picot here before we move into the split ring. So we want to make that the same height as our other picots. This little gap in here. That looks pretty good. So we're going to do our 3 on the top and our 3 on the bottom. So as we pull that first half in, make sure the slack is taken out because we've got this little gap here. Your ring you may want to pull up. Make sure that's sitting flat and then match this side. As I said, I've got that knot that's going to make it a bit different, but I think you get the idea. We're wanting the length of this thread to be the same as the green one. And we're working 3 on the bottom. So if we ignore the tails, that has given us our mock ring, split ring, straight into our split ring. As I mentioned earlier, mignonette rings are very tiny. They usually start with 2 or 3 stitches on each side of the ring. This count usually increases by 1 double stitch per round as the work grows. But again, that depends on your pattern and what look the designer is going for. If it's a really fine piece, then every ring might stay at a count of 3 each side. So after the split ring, leave a length of bare thread. Your pattern should tell you what this length needs to be. We're going to leave 1.5 centimetres for this sample. We can measure this with a ruler, which is probably okay for the first couple of times, but I reckon that's going to drive you nuts pretty quickly. You can do it by eye, but that's not something I'd recommend either. Your bare thread needs to be pretty accurate or your work isn't going to sit very nicely. So what can I say? You all know I'm a gauge girl. This is how I use a gauge to measure my bare thread. I'm going to place the edge of the gauge at the base of our ring. Grab our hand for the next ring and bring the first stitch up against the side of the gauge. Make the second half of your stitch and just check that you've got that lined up. The gauge can slip out and your thread can end up longer than you intend it to be. So we're working 3 stitches, joining back to the next picot on our foundation. And working the next 3. So we go again using our gauge at the base of that ring. Join to the next picot. And work 3. So repeat this all the way around, making sure you keep the length of your bare thread even. And this is what we have so far. Every picot on the foundation has a ring coming off it. The only thing needed to complete this round is 1 length of bare thread between these 2 rings, except we have 2 threads. Let's think about the next round for a minute. We need to start the second round with a ring. Working a split ring here does 2 things. It allows us to bring these 2 threads together, completing the bare thread space needed for round 1. And it gives us a way to climb from round 1 into round 2. Because the split ring is going to sit in the next round, we could increase the count by 1 and work 4 on each side of the split, but I think I'm going to keep my count at 3 for this round as well. To make the split ring, our threads are coming from each side and meeting in the middle, so the length of our bare thread is halved. Remember that this length of bare thread belongs to round 1. It's the split ring that belongs to round 2. So we're swapping shuttles. The original bare thread measurement for round 1 was 1.5 centimetres, which means we're leaving just over 7 mil of bare thread on the top side of our split ring. I'm just going to use my 7 mil gauge. We're starting split ring with a count of 3. And we're leaving 7mm on the other side of the split ring as well. So line your 2 rings up, pull that thread across so they're parallel, and work your 3 double stitches. Close your split ring. So that has given us our bare thread for round 1 and our split ring to move us into round 2. And we've got an extra little picot in there. It's a bit of a dodgy split ring. Okay, so this time we're going to make our bare thread a little longer. I'm going to work a few more rings and then I'll explain why. So I'm going to make my bare thread space 3 centimeters. Now that's pretty big, but keep in mind I'm working with size 10 thread. Trying to work with size 10 thread. Okay, we are joining back to our bare thread space. Don't be too concerned about where you make the join or where the ring sits at this point in time. Our ring will slide freely along that bare thread so we can finalise its position once we've finished working. You can see that can slide. Continue working rings and bare thread all the way around until we get back to the start. And we are back at the start of round 2. So 3 centimeters may have been a little bit excessive for our bare thread. I'm literally just pulling numbers out of my head. So I don't know, it's kind of given it a bit of a flouncy sort of a look. All right, so we're back at the start. We're doing the same thing that we did earlier. We're halving the length of our bare thread and using a split ring to climb out. So because we made such a beautifully long bare thread of 3, we're halving that to 1.5. Working the split ring, 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. Okay, so just like last time, our bare thread belongs to round 2 and our split ring is the start of round 3. You're able to follow our split rings because I've used the 2 different colours. I want to have a look at our bare threads again just quickly. I touched on it earlier, mentioning that we're increasing the length in each round. That's because as we continue to grow, our circumference is increasing. We need to accommodate that. There's a couple of things we can do. We can join 2 rings onto our bare thread, or we can make the length of the bare thread a little longer, as we've been doing for this sample. Possibly not as long as what that is. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.